Shalom all, Stacy the Black Feather Intuitive, and welcome to Black Feather Code Tour, Divining a VIP Life. This is another exciting pop culture segment that we are doing to honor the fabulous and wonderful Whitney Houston. And Whitney Houston's birthday is August 9th of 1963, and I thought it would be kind of fun to tap in and see what's either going on with her now, some of the questions that people really want to know about her life, and just kind of have fun and tune in. I have chosen two really cool decks to do the tarot pull. The Unveiled Tarot I thought would be really important because, Whitney's life wasn't exactly a squeaky clean. There was a lot of interesting stuff going on, and I feel like the Unveiled Tarot really helps us to get into the humanity part of things. And P.S. and FYI, we are all that way. So this isn't a judgment on Whitney. We all live that life. We just are lucky enough to not have to live it in the limelight the way that she did. And then, she's a freaking goddess. So I have pulled a Goddess Power Oracle deck as well. So Keone, you told me today that you had a surprise for me. So how's this all going down?
Well, I've got a special friend of Whitney Houston in his mind. No, I've got a special friend that's a super Whitney Houston fan, and I literally haven't talked to him in 6 years. Not because something happened, we just haven't talked in 6 years. And I said, if he saw a video of me doing a Whitney Houston special and he wasn't on it and someone else is, he would literally kill me. So when I called him last night at 11 p.m., he said, "You're right."
So it's good because you're alive and you're here today.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, do we have a special guest coming on the show?
Yeah, we do. He stayed up all night giving us some very important questions that he wanted answered by Whitney. Let's go ahead and I'll let you meet him.
Hi, my name is Terrence from Washington, D.C. I am a diehard fan of Miss Whitney Houston that you can see behind me. I'm excited to be here to have this moment to ask some questions and just to have the experience. So let's have some fun.
Oh my God, this is so exciting. Terrence, I'm excited to meet Terrence. This is great.
All right, let's get right into it then.
Okay.
My first question is, the world knew her as an icon, a global superstar, Whitney Houston. But to her friends and her family, she was nippy. She was a girl from Newark, New Jersey. But the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So who was the real Whitney Houston?
Oh, I love that. Well, we're going to go with the Goddess deck first and shuffle things up. I feel like she was someone that actually really had a great character. She was someone who really believed in the good in people, like innocent until proven guilty kind of energy. Really wanted to have like deep, honest connections with people, not superficial. She didn't really like superficial, which is ironic considering she's on the stage and she's singing to all of these fans. But to her, even with that, even though she didn't meet any of them, there was like such an experience that she would have in connection to all of their energy, combined. So that's really interesting. I like that question. Well, let's see who she really was. Lilith, Independence. What a great card. So, Lilith is the kind of the history or the folklore of this goddess is that she was Adam's first wife, and she got kicked out of paradise, the Garden of Eden, because she would not submit to her husband, to Adam. And so as a result, they had to make Eve, they had to make someone who was a little more subservient and submissive. And Lilith is one of my personal favorite goddesses. This is an energy that I work with and that I hold near and dear to my heart. So I love that this is who has come up. And I would say to you, this really was Whitney. This was Whitney who said, you're not going to let somebody rain on your parade. You're not going to allow someone to stomp on your dreams or to squash out your light. And I feel like she was really an empowerer. I feel like with her friends, with her loved ones, she always wanted to see people succeed. And it was very frustrating to her when she would run into someone who was the opposite to that, the antithesis to that energy. And she would stand up firmly for everything that she believed in. She was very independent. And you could see that even in just the way that she was living her life. And I would argue that, the music business for women, it's, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know, unless you've lived under a rock, that it's been hell. It's been rigged, in a lot of ways against women. You see all of the success, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of, the producers steal the money. The big companies, steal the money. The man takes the money and holds the woman, under the boot. And I feel like even though she didn't get an opportunity to make a lot of shift or change in that area, I would say in the way that Tina Turner did, where she kind of fought for all of that stuff. I would say that Whitney, who was caught up in all the same nonsense, because of the music industry, she found ways to figure things out and to make things work. So yeah, I feel like as a person, she was fiercely independent and fiercely protective of the people that she loved, and a fierce supporter and cheerleader of those around her, to say, hey, you don't necessarily need anyone else to be who you are. Just shine your light. Wow. Super cool. And I want to say, I feel like Terrence, she was a force to be reckoned with, in a lot of ways. Like, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. You piss her off, she's going to take it to the next level. Like she's got a long fuse, or, kind of a long lead, but once she hits the end of that, that's it. And she's not going back. And I think August 9th means she's a Leo as well. So yeah, she's got all that fiery energy, and she's going to be here to love you and love you with her whole heart. But she can also burn you. She can burn you with her whole heart as well. And that's where you run into trouble. So yeah, Lilith all over the place. I love that.
From tabloids to the media, there's been a lot of lies and hearsay made about her through over the course of her life, and even now today. But what is the biggest misconception that the world has of who she is, how she lived her life?
Wow. So before I even pull a card, I'm hearing very clearly that it's the whole judgment idea, like the fact that she got involved in drugs. And, there's such a double standard that, for rockers, it was like totally acceptable. Like it was part of the lifestyle. But if a woman got involved in that, shame on her, like that's despicable. That's disgusting. Who does she think she is? And, judging her motherhood and all that kind of stuff. I feel like the biggest misconception around her was this idea that she was anything other than a human, just like you and I and any of those who are watching this video. I also feel like she was greatly misunderstood because she had a lot of really incredible ideas, visions for where things were going to go, where she saw things happening. And I feel like she didn't get a lot of that opportunity. She didn't get a lot of, people didn't take her seriously for the creativity and the inventiveness that she had. And so I feel there's a misconception there that she's just the diva. She just stands up and she sings and everybody else does everything else around her. I feel like that was put upon her, that she actually wanted to contribute and participate more, and she was always held back. Yeah, interesting. 7 of Cups. So dreams and illusions, she had all of these dreams. She had all of these visions for what could be. And sometimes they would be enacted, but it would be somebody else taking the credit for it. But most times it would be, you're just the star. Just get up there and do your thing. And don't worry about a thing, kind of the they're there. And while she would rail against it, she was not taken seriously. And as a result, she went into, sort of coping mechanisms to be able to navigate those waters. And every once in a while, I feel like she would pick the purity, instead of getting the produced applesauce in the store, she's actually picking the apple herself. That's what this card is showing. I feel every once in a while she would have a little victory there, and it would usually be because she had to, sort of maneuver around people. But it wasn't always the case. So yeah, I feel like she was highly inventive, highly creative, extremely savvy with her ideas, and she just wasn't taken seriously.
So the world knows she suffered a miscarriage while filming the movie The Bodyguard. And even through all that trauma, she returned back to the set to continue filming soon thereafter. How does she get past that emotional hurt to continue to move through the movie, and how that impacts her in that moment and going forward?
Yeah. What I'm getting right off the bat is that she actually had someone behind the scenes. And I'm not saying it from a bodyguard perspective, because that was Hollywood. That was a story, it was loosely based on whatever. But I do believe that she had someone, I don't want to say an affair, but I want to say someone that maybe there was an emotional affair, an emotional connection there that really kind of walked her through it, helped her through it, held her hand. I feel like this one was different. I feel like she had another sort of miscarriage or another situation that was, an extremely disappointing loss that affected her in a different way. But this one, like this miscarriage, it feels like it meant something. I don't know how to explain that other than to say, like, this one meant something. So, sometimes women, we get pregnant despite our best efforts, and we don't necessarily want that. And there's the struggle to kind of process that, and what do you want to do? Then there's no, I really tried to get pregnant. I really wanted this baby, right? And now I've had a miscarriage. I feel like she had gone through some other experiences like that, but this one really hit home. And this is the one that she talked about, because I feel like it happened right at, the pinnacle of what was going on and going through for her. So I feel like she had someone that she was comforted by. This feels like a lover energy, is what I keep hearing, and not the father of her child, maybe, or maybe that was the identity of that child, and she was feeling such a deep loss around that. I feel like with her, everything was about throwing herself into her music. So I feel like that's really where she, you defer and deflect, you distract yourself, you just throw yourself into something that you can phone it in at times. And she always gained a lot of energy from the crowd, right? From her audience, from her fans. And so I feel like she needed a task. She needed something to do, and that's what she did. Yeah, for her, it's a complete new beginning. We got the Fool card. She did feel quite exposed. She did walk on stage a lot, thinking to herself how surreal this is. Don't you know that this horrible thing happened to me, and yet I'm coming out on stage and I'm going to give you my everything. And it was almost like she felt like the whole experience was a bit perverse, in her mind. But once she got into that, she put on her Whitney persona, or flipped the Whitney switch. She was able to get through it. And I feel that those were some of her most prolific, most profound performances as well, because she was so vulnerable, so exposed, and she sang through it. And it was a new beginning for her. It was at that point that she recognized her music needed to go deeper. It needed to mean something a little more personal than just picking random music that people had written. So I feel like it was the pinnacle and the height, and also that new beginning, I feel, was the beginning of some of the other, I want to say, more self-sabotaging choices that she made.
Many of us know that Whitney had a very, very close friend named Robin Crawford. They were close even before she was signed with Clive Davis to Arista Records. They were close in high school and in summer camp. And to even say her and Robin were girlfriends early on in their life. Robin and Whitney were very, very close, and she was there with her and her entourage through some of the amazing highs that she had in her career. From being signed, being signed to doing the Bodyguard movie and some major moments beyond. Pat Houston, Whitney's sister-in-law, is now serving as the executor of Whitney's estate. Her and Primary Wave had a equal footing in all things coming from Whitney now that bear her name, her image, her likeness, and her voice. Now she's passed on. How does Whitney feel that her legacy is being kept and presented and carried for not only current fans, but for future fans as well?
Good question. It's asking, basically, it's a question always asked by people who are famously known and they pass on and someone's in charge of their estate. And people always wonder, would Elvis be happy with how his estate's being ran? Would Michael be happy with how his estate's being ran? Would Prince be happy? So why not ask the same question? Do you think Whitney, well, not do you think, I know you go on what you feel, how Whitney looks at how her estate PR and her image is being ran these days?
Yeah, I actually feel that she's not particularly happy with how things are being run. And I feel like a big part of that has to do with the fact that she really wanted more artistic right to her stuff, artistic license to her stuff. And it just frustrates her that people are still continuing to make money off of her, but it's not. And I feel very strongly that, like, she's with her daughter on the other side, but there's also a sadness to where that money is going now, and that was supposed to be kind of like her legacy and supporting the legacy. I pulled two cards here. We've got the Ace of Cups, and this makes a lot of sense. There's emotion there. There's where she's supposed to feel full and overflowing. She feels as though a lot of her work is not being properly categorized or utilized in the ways that she would like it to be. I don't feel like in the spirit world we lose touch with, the trivialities of humanity. But when you're asking about her essence, she's not particularly happy with where everything has gone. And she feels, with the Hanged Man here, she feels like, again, it comes back to her being such a visionary about a lot of things, but never having the opportunity to really express those visionary, dreams and drives. And she sees that. And I just heard, like, it's like when she comes back to do it again, she's going to do it very differently. She's going to be in charge of her own show and her own things and stuff. I do feel that she's making the decision to come back. And I feel like she's going to come back in kind of a similar way. I feel singer. I feel singer of that level of fame and stardom, but I feel like she's going to do it very, very differently. She's going to own the rights to her stuff. She's going to be the one in charge of her ideas, and I feel that she's going to have more of a collaborative approach to things. That's the biggest thing. I don't feel that she felt that she was supportive collaboratively. That it was like she was being told what was going to happen, and she would just, she at some point, you choose your battles, right?
Now she's passed on. My question is, Does she truly now understand how valued and loved she truly is?
I feel like even though she thrived on, knowing that her fans really connected with her music, she knew she was loved in those ways. But I want to say to you, just like any human being, you can get that love and adoration, and that can fill a portion of your life. But is it all of your life? And I feel like the adoration and the love that she really sought out, that deep connection that she sought out, I don't know that she actually feels that those people that she really loved, her close circle, chosen family, necessarily got all of it. Some of them, yes, she feels it very deeply with certain people. But what I keep hearing is like she peeks into people's minds, right? She peeks into their thoughts, and she knows that a lot of them have regret for the way that things went down. They wish that they had another opportunity to kind of be a better person with her. But there were some that she trusted that she realizes they never really had that connection. She thought that it was a connection that she had, but she didn't. There's one like best friend, I feel like someone who she was really close to, that absolutely there's I feel like they kind of talk in their dream state kind of thing all the time. She definitely feels that love, but she felt that love here in person as well. So yeah, it's a bit convoluted. I feel like her soul on the other side is still kind of working through and processing some of her choices in her life when she was incarnated. And I pulled from the Goddess Oracle here, and we have Iris, communication. I feel like that's exactly it. It was all about how she thought she was communicating and expressing herself, and how others were communicating to her. It was almost like she misunderstood or misread what they were actually seeking from her or wanting from her. And you could argue that that's just life and humanity. We often, we always live our lives through the filter of our own experiences, right? That's how we judge our lives. That's why the saying, walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Sometimes we have to, take ourselves out of a situation and empathize with another person. How would I feel if this happened to me? And I feel like she was around a lot of people who didn't do that, but she did. And so there's a lot of evaluation around what was communicated to her, what she was communicating, and the reciprocity or lack thereof that was connected into all of that.
You know what? You scare me sometimes, because what you just said about there was a best friend leads into the next question.
Mm.
Many of us know that Whitney had a very, very close friend named Robin Crawford. They were close even before she was signed with Clive Davis to Arista Records. They were close in high school and in summer camp. And some even say her and Robert were girlfriends early on in their life. Robin and Whitney were very, very close, and she was there with her and her entourage through some of the amazing highs that she had in her career, from being signed, being signed to doing the Bodyguard movie and some major moments beyond. There came a point in time to where they had to part ways because Whitney was in conflict between her husband, Bobby Brown, and choosing between that and her friendship to Robin. And so Whitney, of course, chose Bobby, and Robin went off her own way. In her book, a few years ago, the story was told that Robin said that Whitney called her and left her a voice message to call her back. But at the time, she didn't have her new number to call to return the phone call, and she always wondered what the call was or what was she trying to say. So asking now on the afterlife, if you can share, if they really can share, what was she trying to say to Robin in that phone call?
Wow. I don't know any of this history at all. So this is just fascinating to me. I hear what she wanted to talk about was the thing I'm hearing is I made a mistake. I made the wrong choice. I want you in my life. I'm dying in this relationship. I can't keep being who he wants me to be. The only time I receive clarity or ever feel like I am truly connected to myself is when I'm with you. And my heart hurts that I chose to discard you. I know that you understand why I made the choice, but it doesn't make the choice right. I need help. I'm drowning. I need help. You're the only person who knows who I am, and I've lost sight of that. I know I've said things like needing help or wanting help before, but this is different. I don't know who I am, but you do. I need your help. I just keep hearing I'm drowning. I'm drowning in him. I'm drowning in this. Wow. Yeah, I feel that she always knew that Robin would forgive her for making that choice, like kind of on a heart level. And I feel like when she called, I don't feel that she was under the influence. I feel that it was pure, raw emotion. It was pure her. And there was such a realization that she literally didn't know who the hell she was. And needed help to pull away from him. And I feel like she had also had a conversation with someone else earlier that day or the day before, where it wasn't as, deep as all this that she had to say. But she recognized, like, I'm asking for help, and the people I'm asking for help, either are choosing not to help me because it's not in their best interest to help me, or they just don't know who I am. But then she realized, but I'm also not telling them who I am because I don't know who I am. And that's when she was like, I can't do this. And there's one person that I know can help me find myself again, find myself back to myself. Yeah. Wow. That's so sad.
Oh, do you know how Whitney Houston was found, correct?
I believe she was found in a bathroom with a needle or something. There was an overdose, I believe.
She was found in a tub of water.
A tub of
And
water.
you kept saying drowning.
Oh, Jesus.
I didn't say, I'm not saying she drowned, but I was just saying when you kept saying drowning, I just kept picturing that tub of water.
Ooh.
Here's it.
She OD'd, right? Like she didn't die of drowning. She died of an overdose. Or we don't know that.
Reportedly.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
Reportedly. Oh.
I got chills. I think there's something weird there.
Some say a girl's first love is her father. And we know that Whitney and her father, John Houston, were very tight. However, later on in his life, he was led astray by some outside actors and in turn sued her for $100 million in her contract for being breached. I want to know, being that they were so close, how did the betrayal of her father impact her and the way she saw the world?
Yeah, she was absolutely devastated. It was one of the biggest betrayals that she has ever experienced in her entire life. I'm hearing that she knew that her dad was inherently a good person, but she could not align how he could have done that to her. Like I feel almost the energy of like, but you were my person. You were the person, you were my dad. I was supposed to be able to trust you with everything. I was supposed, you were here to protect me. And now I'm the one who's having to protect you. And then you're coming after me. I feel very strongly that her dad had narcissistic tendency. It was all about him. And because she was raised in that, there was always that, but I need to win your approval. I need to please you. So she didn't realize that as long as she was pleasing him, everything was okay. But the second that she stopped pleasing him, he would turn on her because it was really always about him. And she never, and I hear to her dying day, she never understood that. She never could wrap her head around his why, because to wrap her head around his why meant that everything about their relationship up to that point had been not a lie, but based on a completely different foundation than what she thought. And I feel like that is kind of a theme in her life, is misreading people's whys in her life. And I'm not talking about the fame component of it. I'm talking about, this is before all that fame came up, is that she saw the good in everyone, and she got, I want to say, hung up on that a lot of times. That was where she could lose her objectivity, because she would be like, okay, well, this person showed me this our first meeting, and they might have shown me the opposite in the next 3 meetings, but because this was my first impression, this is who this person is. I mean, as she got older and she got wiser, I mean, you have experience and you start to learn. It's not like she just lived in the clouds the whole time. But when it came to people close to her, she had no concept of that. And that was because of the relationship that she had with her father, and how he positioned it in such a way that it made it seem like it was a true bond and a true connection, but really it was all about him.
Speaking to a child and parent relationship, Whitney's daughter, Bobbi Kristina, and her were very close. Some would argue that Bobbi Kristina led a life and a path that was very similar to Whitney's, i.e., she was attached to a partner who didn't fully support her and care for her and love her like a partner should. And B, she unfortunately died from a very similar traumatic experience involving being in a bathtub underwater. So again, we know that Whitney had to navigate through the world as being a global iconic superstar, Whitney Houston. However, to Chrissy, that was just mom. And so we know that Whitney had to deal and balance those two worlds at the same time, with tours and requirements and demands are put on her every day from her career. So were there ever any regrets in the way she navigated through her life as a mother?
Oh, yeah, I'm getting so much. So in an effort to find again, I come back to that connection, her needing deep connection. She and her daughter became that connection for her. And I want to say, I just keep hearing like the codependence, that even though she didn't mean to, her daughter, and I'm going to say to you, I'm going to describe it as empaths, right? Her daughter was an empath. She felt into her mother's feelings and emotions and her needs, and her daughter decided to morph herself into whatever that was for her mother. And I just keep hearing that her daughter lived not like in her shadow, but like her whole life was built around Whitney. It was built around Whitney's life. So her life was never her own, but she also never understood that she could have a life of her own because of the nature of their lifestyle. When you are that level of stardom, it's really challenging for anyone around you to bring some sense of normalcy, or to have some sense of normalcy, because it's not normal. There's nothing normal. And you can try to bring as much of it as you can, but at the end of the day, like, she grew up with security guards, around the house. And she grew up traveling here, there, and everywhere and having to be homeschooled. She never had a, one solid school that she went to for any great length of time, because then she would have to go and travel with mom. And she never saw it as a burden or as a problem, because that was all she knew. But I want to say that from a psychological perspective, she did not have her own identity. So Terrence, when you talk about, her following in her mother's footsteps, I feel like Whitney is saying that's where she has the greatest regret, because she imprinted on her daughter and leaned on her daughter in ways that were a bit unhealthy. It was too much to ask of a child to be, what she needed her to be. But as an empath, that's what her daughter leaned into. Mom feels sad, so I'm going to do everything I can to make her happy, or I'll be sad with her. This is the way that life is. And this is my example. And I adore my mother and I love my mother. And I'm not saying that Whitney did horrible things to her, but I do intentionally, but I do feel that Whitney's choices and her lifestyle really took its toll. And Chrissy never formed her own identity. She never got a sense of, this is what I want for my life. And I feel Whitney on the other side of that has deep regret and remorse for that, because Chrissy could have been an entirely different individual, but instead she was like a mini me. And she didn't even understand that there was anything else that she could be. And it's not because Whitney, said, oh, you have to be me. It wasn't that. It was all the subconscious, all the subtle. And then being raised in that trauma and being raised in that chaos and that abuse and, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that just takes its toll. So yeah, Chrissy just never knew who she was. She was always her mother.
Oh, listen, I really like this next one. I'll let him say it. I was gonna break it down, but it's just better if he says it.
Whitney's first recorded song as a solo artist was in 1978 called Life's a Party. Her last recorded song was 2012 for the film Sparkle called Celebrate. I find it curious that her career and her catalog of music is bookended by two songs, both telling us the same theme: to celebrate, have life, and to party. And so I'm wondering, is that coincidence or divine intervention in how she should be remembered going forward?
Oh, Terrence, you ask the best freaking questions ever. That's incredible. So one of the things that I get from my guides all the time is that, we as humans get so hung up on purpose. What's my purpose? What's my purpose? But their thing always is like, okay, yeah, you might come in and, want to explore different, aspects of your life, but there's no divine purpose that you absolutely have to experience and explore. Other than that, you're here to have the most joy as you can possibly have on this planet. There's joy in everything. There's joy in the big and the small and the, all the things and the stuff. So I think it's really interesting, like you said, the first is Life's a Party, the last is Celebrate. I feel like that's the message. It's definitely divinely, nothing is by accident. It's not a coincidence. It's divinely ordered. But I feel like it's because she did have some of those experiences, but she also didn't have a lot of those experiences. Like showing I want to say, it's not about balance as much as it's about like the extremes, right? Like if you're having really high highs, but then you're also having really low lows, yes, you're living life, you're having the experience, the soul has come for all of it. But when you're trying to really make deep connections, sometimes you need to bring a little more of the middle into the mix. And so I feel like it's almost like she's giving us the recipe. Do all the crazy things and then find a way to alchemize it to come into the who am I? What is my life, really about? What meaning do I want my life to have? So I've done all these things, and now what does it all mean? And I feel like through her music, you're experiencing that. And because she did die younger and unexpected, unexpected to us, right? To her soul path, that was kind of always intended. She didn't sort of finish the chapter, right? She didn't get to the part of being able to say, okay, here's what it all means. So it's left to all of us, her fans, to evaluate the music, to experience the music, to experience her life through her music. And not to say that we get to judge what her stuff means or how she mattered, but maybe there is a component of that, that how did she matter in your life? How does this song, how do you relate to this song? How do you relate to this? How do you party in your life? How do you celebrate? Do you celebrate in the everyday? Do you wait up and you only have certain days of celebration? What is a celebration for you? So I feel like that's kind of the legacy she's leaving behind is okay, I did all of this bulk of stuff. It's in the music. Now it's up to you to determine, how you want that to work for you. I got 2 of Cups. It's the soulmate card. This is a duality. It's also union, pairing, partnership. And I feel like ultimately for her, even though she got caught up in, sort of a darker, very dysfunctional, very abusive, romantic situation, she would call it soulmate. I would not call it soulmate. I would call it more of a trauma bond, sort of situation. I feel like where she was soulmated was with her music. And that was her service to humanity. Expressing herself through her music so that people could really truly connect and get to know her in the ways that she struggled to have in the majority of her personal relationships. The second card that came through, interesting, Ace of Swords. So yeah, cutting through the bullshit, getting right to the heart of the matter. I feel like that's what, when we're talking about those 2 bookended songs, that's really what it's about. She's like, at the end of the day, none of the other stuff really matters. It's how did you live your life? How did you celebrate the breath, the air in your lungs? How did you celebrate the gift that life is? And I don't know that she, would say to you, like, do it the way I did it. But I want to say to you, there are some things that she does have regret around or that she feels that she could have done differently. But there are a lot of other things that she's happy that she had those extremes, because it's through the extremes that she really started to learn who she wanted to be. And I feel that that's what she's going to be exploring in her next iteration, her next life. Very cool question. I love that.
For fans like me, we love hearing her voice, hearing her music, seeing her on stage, watching her music videos, watching her movies. Those things continue to still give us joy and cement her in our hearts as the true diva and queen that she really is. But now in the afterlife, what gives her joy?
Oh, very cool. We're going to pull a goddess card for this. But I do feel like what brings her joy is seeing how others connect to her music. So what you're describing, that is something that she's happy that that's a legacy that she's left behind, that people really do, even after all of this time that she has been gone, that people are connecting. Again, I sound like a broken record, but it was all about connection for her. Always about the connection, making those connections. And even though she wasn't able to necessarily make them with all of the people, sort of in her inner circle, she had a few, definitely. But it wasn't what she was really like. It wasn't enough. She wanted more of that, and she wanted consistency with that. She got it with the expression of herself through her music and the connection with her fans. So yeah, I feel like that's really what it is. The card that we're getting here is Métis, wisdom. This, in her way, she never felt like a wise person. In fact, she would tell you, I don't always make great choices. I'm intelligent. I know what's right and what's wrong, but do I apply the wisdom of that knowledge to my life? Not always. And I feel like some of her music, I'm just hearing right now, some of her music was her way of trying to put words to what it was that she felt that she was failing at, or that she really wanted, but didn't quite know how to achieve. And there's a part of her that I feel was a bit chameleon-like, in terms of, like, she was very unique and like brought her own to all of her stuff. But I do feel that there was a bit of a chameleon-like energy for her when she did feel overwhelmed. It was just sort of easier for her to become what another person needed her to be. And a lot of times that was Whitney. So she would just, I always talk about the switch, the performer switch. She would just turn on that aspect of her persona in order to kind of get through something. And I feel like right now she's kind of looking at that and saying, wow, like I didn't really apply the wisdom, in that I chameleoned rather than chose to step into the wisdom of what I had learned. And maybe that's the issue. She never really fully learned those lessons. And when she did learn, like for example, with her dad, when she finally saw the truth of it, I mean, the betrayal, the devastation, she couldn't go back from that. But I don't know that she fully learned from it. Like, had he come back into her life and apologized and did all sorts of things and, tried to whatever, I feel like she probably would have made some concession and brought him back. And that was just the good nature of her heart, but also that dysfunctional part, the wounded part of her, that she didn't know how to heal on her own. So wisdom, she would not say she was wise because she didn't always apply the wisdom that was available to her through these experiences that she had.
And now we come to the finale. His final question.
Now I must ask, is there anything Whitney wants to tell to us, her fans, those who still love and still care for and still cherish her for her amazing gift and for the memories that we will never forget?
Oh, I love that. Be your fabulous selves. Find what makes you unique, because you're all stars in your own way. Hold on tightly to the things that really matter to you. It doesn't matter if the rest of the world likes it or doesn't like it. Focus on what matters to you. And even when everything else and everyone else behaves poorly or behaves badly, always come back into your heart, because your heart actually is the only thing that you can fully count on to know what is true and what allows you to access that deep well of goodness. And she is so honored to have had the experience to be able to share her life, the good, the bad, the ugly. Because at the end of the day, for her, it was the experience of the extremes. And now what are you going to take from that? Again, she wasn't wise, but she's left behind all of that information so that you can apply the wisdom I keep hearing that's her gift to you. And we pulled the Gaia card, the earth energy. This is a unique place where we get to create whatever experience we wish to have. And she said she created a big one. And it was Hollywood worthy, she's saying. And she hopes that her story, that legacy, gives everyone the opportunity to get to know themselves better. She's not saying don't make the mistakes I've made. She's saying learn from my life. And when I sing, I am singing the notes of your heart. We're connected. That's not fake. That's not imagined. That is real. And that is the connection that she treasures, and that is the connection she always wanted. And she thanks her fans for giving her the experience of that connection, even though she didn't understand it to be quite what she was seeking at the time. And she knows it now, and she's so grateful.
Awesome. Loved everything I heard today, Stacy.
Wow, Keone, that was really fun to do. This one was really, really fun to do. And thank you, Terrence, so much for your really insightful questions. Like, I can't even tell you, you're brilliant at it. I would actually love to pick your brain about some other, maybe celebrities that you've connected with, because your questions were amazing. So thank you so much for that. This was a wonderful collab, and thank you, Keone, for creating it. Very, very energizing. And so that is our episode, our Black Feather Code Tour segment on Whitney Houston. And, I have always loved listening to her. She's such a powerhouse in her music. And so this was wonderful to be able to honor her and pay tribute to her in this way. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. As always, I hope you have the most amazing week. Until we see each other next time, we'll see you on the flip side, and transform well.